All right. I just want to point out that no one understands a Rebbe, what a Rebbe is. And no one understands why the Rebbe says one thing to one person, one thing to another person. So perhaps I spoke out of line yesterday when I said that this mimer is about this mimer is not about that. I just want to give some context to what I did say and what I cannot say. There was a jester in the court of the Rebbe Marash, Chaz the Rebbe Marash. He said, he's just like the Rebbe. How he's like the Rebbe? He says, because whatever I know, the Rebbe knows. And if there's something the Rebbe doesn't know, I also don't know. So just like the Rebbe. So there are many letters to the Rebbe which advise people to do more ruchnius, add in their ruchnius, and through this there'll be help agashmius. There are many letters like that. And the Rebbe doesn't necessarily point out that what the Rebbe says in this mimer. Just to give you some idea about what's unique about this mimer before continuing the conversation, I'm going to paraphrase from a letter. I mentioned yesterday that this letter really, this mimer really introduced the Rebbe to the Chassidim in Russia, because this was the first mimer they got. And also in Eretz Yisrael, there was a Chassid named Mishagarari, who was one of the senior Chassidim in Eretz Yisrael, known to be very knowledgeable in Chassidus. And the Rebbe began his leadership a year before, so the Chassidim didn't really know who the Rebbe really is. And he writes a letter after being at this mimer, what he experienced. I'll just quote for you paraphrasing from his letter. On this Shabbos, there was a Fabrengen. The mimer was on the verse משכלה. He spoke a lot about Aveda. There were the incredible tears of the Rebbe who rip the heart, tear the heart, even the heart of stone. He tried to hold himself in with all his might, but he couldn't, and tears were on the table. Everything he said came out of the depth of his neshama. I never understood what Chassidus means when it says hazazas hanefesh, the soul being moved, soul being stirred, or the words in Chassidus, bitterness from the depth of the soul. I can't put in writing, and I can't describe what I saw and what I felt. He spoke about how you have to cherish every moment, what you could do and what you are doing. I'll tell you the truth. I don't know how to write what I heard because there was so much tears which came from the depth of his heart and soul. And we were so excited, we were so emotional, and we were so moved that I don't know the words that he said exactly. But the intent was very clear, that every moment and every hour and every day is precious. And there will be a day of reckoning. And the responsibility and the merit and the obligation that we have. The main thing is, he says about this mimer, is what cannot be said. I stood at the side and I saw his effort not to express his pain, not to express his bitterness, not to cry so much, but his inner feelings overwhelmed his strain not to cry. After the mimer, for a few moments, he could not, so to speak, come to himself, and he wiped his tears. At that moment, I thought, how do we have the chutzpah, how do we have the insolence to come before him and to ask for this and ask for that? Every moment is precious. We say to the Rebbe different things, different promises. I became very embarrassed to myself. That's what Rabbi Grari writes. Grari. And there are a lot of things that the Rebbe, so to speak, wants to say, it doesn't say. Like the Rebbe once told Rabbi Groner that before he issues any instruction to the Chassidim, he first estimates, can they do at least 50% of what he's asking? So a lot of things the Rebbe wants to say and doesn't say, so to speak. A lot of things that the Rebbe says in a way of a suggestion, which is really more critical thing that Rabbi Shachat, Langezunt, the Rosh Hashiva here in Los Angeles, he asked Rebbe for a bracha for her children. Rebbe told him he should write his Chiddushei Torah. He told his wife that she should give out Shabbos candles, brochures about Shabbos candles. And Rebbe didn't say they're connected, But sure enough, he published his first book on Chidushei Torah, his insights in Torah, and he had his first child. He had a child. He published 1 year 2 books, and he had twins. So there are many letters on this theme of you add in Ruchnius, this will add in Gashmius. And there are other letters which Rebbe doesn't say exactly what he means. That sometimes a person writes to Rebbe a letter, I need a bracha for this specific thing. The Rebbe says, do this specific thing. You need a bracha for children, check your mezuzahs. There are other letters where there doesn't say specifically why what he's saying is pertinent. I think more often than people know, you could just read the letters, you see it. The Rebbe says these words: your personal life and your communal life are dependent upon each other. What you do for others and what you need for yourself, there's a relationship. And it says in Hayom Yom, famous Hayom Yom, where the guy came to Alter Rebbe and he had all these loans that he needed to pay and he needed to marry his daughters. Alter Rebbe said, instead of asking what you need, you should ask what you're needed for. So that's also in the theme of this Maimer, that the Rebbe is saying that there is, as we'll get to the Maimer to Hashem, that there is a need for us to think about what is needed from us. We need to think about that. Why every moment Hashem gives us is precious, and there's 1,440 minutes a day, and they're here for a reason. What I was saying yesterday is that I don't see overtly in the Rebbe's letters, my perspective, that the Rebbe always says to people, if you don't do this, you're not going to have that. The Rebbe doesn't say you need to cherish every moment, and that's why things aren't happening for you. You don't see that. But it could be that the Rebbe alludes to this concept in this mind by saying your personal life and your communal life are dependent upon each other. There are certainly many, many letters. The Rebbe tells people that there's many, many letters. Rebbe tells people why you satisfied. How can you be satisfied? There's such a great need every moment. There are a lot of letters like that. But bring it back to the person and saying, and you're asking for A, B, and C, not as much. We mentioned something here parenthetically yesterday, which leaves more questions than answers, and that is the Gemara says that our health and our parnasa and our children doesn't depend on our merits; it depends upon mazel. The Gemara is talking about 2 sages, Rabba and Rav Chisda, and the Gemara says that they were both very righteous, holy tzaddikim. The Gemara says that even the smallest sage mentioned in the Talmud could resurrect the dead. But they had very different lives. Rav Chisda was very wealthy. So wealthy, the Gemara says, that dogs would eat, he would feed his dogs from the fine flour that was just left over from his meals. And he had more left over that wasn't even eaten. And Rabba's household ate barley, which is considered to be inferior, barley flour. Rabba, in his whole household, there were 60 miscarriages. In Rav Chisda's household, there were 60 weddings. Rabba lived to the age of 42, and Rav Chisda lived to the age of 90. So, and yet they were both perfect tzaddikim. So that the Gemara says, therefore, don't say that a person's a merit is what makes their life the way it is. There's a lot that's not dependent upon merit. There's a lot that depends upon mazel. On the other hand, if all these letters that Rebbe telling people they need more blessing to add in their mitzvahs, and we have in this mimer itself saying that this mimer itself says that although the Gemara says this, that it doesn't depend on merit, it depends on mazel. There is an element that does depend on merit. There's a higher kind of service of Hashem which does bring a different kind of blessing, a ribuya bracha, an abundance by doing a different kind of service of Hashem, as we'll soon discover in the mind what that service of Hashem is. That does trigger a different kind of response in heaven. As Rebbe used the expression, act in a miraculous way, that brings a miraculous response from Hashem. So there is definitely a response to Hashem in our lives by us adding in our spiritual life that does bring bracha. And then there is a unique kind of service of Hashem that brings a unique kind of bracha. And there is also more unanswered than answered. As the Talmud says, we do not understand why the righteous suffer and why the wicked prosper. So there's more unanswered than answered, but this is a little bit about the system that we're describing over here. Okay. So any questions before we continue? Okay. So we began the Maimer and we just started talking about how this blessing or this promise of Hashem that you will not have miscarriages, though no one will be barren, you'll have a long life, you'll have a lot of blessing in your bread and your water. This blessing is a continuation. The verse before it says serve God. And our question yesterday was, what does it mean to serve God? Does God need something? We found a contradiction in the words of our sages, and some places it says God needs, and some places it says he doesn't need. So which one is it? Does our Torah mitzvahs impact him? Does he, so to speak, need it? Or does he not need it? That's what it seems to be a contradiction in the words of our sages. Let's continue now on, and let's go to Ois. Let's go to Ois base. Chassidus quotes the Sefer of Beis HaKodesh, Shemasha Amru Abisenu Zechenu Levracha V'chi Mikvah Seif Gemer Hu Al Adin Yochid Sheresh Hashrashim Delay Like we say Klal. When our sages say that does God care if we slaughter an animal from its neck or from its neck or from its back? Clearly, the mitzvahs are only given to us for our benefit, to purify us. So Chassidus says that, according to Beis HaKodesh, that statement of our sages is referring to a certain level of godliness called the solitary master, the source of all sources. At that level, he does not care. What is that level? What does source of all sources mean? Source of all sources, it sounds like lahavdil, like science fiction. What's source of all sources? So there is the Madrega of Arich and Madrega of Atik. Madrega of Arich is desire, and in desire itself, there are different levels of desire, just like by our desires. Chassidus says that every person who does not have a home is not called a person. The Gemara says that. That means we're born with an innate need to have a home. Do we ever think about having a home? And first or second grade? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But there is a part of us that wants that. Then there is some time that desire within yourself is impacted because of things you see and things you hear and things you experience. And that innate desire, which is in the very core of your soul, that innate desire comes to the fore and you think, no, that's a good idea. It's not you want it. It's not that you need it. That's a good idea. That in Chassidus is called Rotzin Nelam, a hidden desire. The fact you're born with the desire to have a home, that's called Rotzin Muchlat. That's a desire which is in the essence of your soul. You don't even know about it. Then because you thought one day it's a good idea to have a home, you are now open to the Redfin, and you're open to Zillow, and you're open to all these kinds of advertisements that there were their suggestions. That's a great home. I wish I could have that. So that desire, I want to have a home, that's called Ratzon Go, a revealed desire. So the Arich is the God's desire for creation, and God's desire for creation is called the Shorashim. That's called the sources. It's the source for the various different worlds and different things that are created throughout the spiritual cosmos. Because God desires a world, therefore there are many things that are created. It's the source. That's Ratzon, that's a desire. Then there is Sheresh HaSharashim, the source of all sources, where at that level it's not really called a source yet. Similar to how we're born with the desire to have a home, where there's nothing that's impacted because of that. It's not even, you can't call it a source for anything yet. We don't even know we have that desire. We're born with it, but we don't even feel it. Not conscious of it. So Atik is removed from the level called desire. Atik is called God's pleasure. Just like by human being, I'm not going to get into this now. I discussed this before. Our Hasidus has this roller coaster. Do we want what we desire? Do we desire what we want? Do we want what we have pleasure from? Or do we have pleasure from what we want? And there are various ways of looking at it. But for our purposes, Atik is called Sheirish Hashem. It's called the source of all sources, meaning it's not yet a source for anything. It's like Ratzon Muchla, like desire which is embedded in the core of the soul, which not even conscious of. And that from there is emanated the level of Arich, which Arich does have a desire for creation. Okay. And at that level, the Torah says, your term, what does it matter to him? At a level of Atik, what importance is there if you slaughter from this side, slaughter from that side? That's the perspective of Atik. However, for the sake of glory, what does glory mean? Glory in Chassidus refers to Chachma, refers to wisdom. Wisdom is the first revelation of godliness. What does wisdom have to do with glory? So Rabbi Yochanan said about his clothing, that his clothing honors him. He called his clothing that what honors me. Why does his clothing honor him? Because by wearing his clothing, it expresses him. He is expressed by the clothing that he wears. So there's a Imam of the Rebbe Rashab, parenthetically, the Rebbe Rashab's speaking about this concept of Chassidus, and he says something very sharp that your clothing affects you. And he's talking about the taiva, the desire to have nice clothing. He says that your clothing is after kemendas ya on roof and maiver. Because maybe you could say that there is a peripheral effect on a person through the clothing that they wear. That there is something that peripheral is not the right word, but it's mavir. It does reach you. Anyways, so Rabbi Yochanan called his clothing that what honors him. He is expressed by his clothing. In a similar way, the first expression, the first revelation of godliness is Chachma. Chachma, as the Alter Rebbe from the Maggid, is a place where it's revealed how Hashem is alone and there's nothing besides him. So there's no creatures there, there's nothing there, but there's still an expression of Hashem's truth. And that's why it's called kavod, it's called glory. It's a first revelation of Hashem. Kavod is Chachma. So for the sake of Chachma, there is our service of Hashem does impact. To bring down the lights of Hashem into the vessels, to bring down that which is higher to come down. Certainly, our Aveda does cause that. So when we say that our efforts do not impact heaven, that's referring to the level of Atik. That's referring to the inner dimension of the Kesser, the inner level of the throne, of the crown. At that level, we say that our term mitzvahs does not reach, our merit cannot reach that level. But regarding the level of Chachma and below, there's certainly an impact from our term mitzvahs. As we know, the famous teaching of Mzitcha Maggid, Da Malamayel Mimach, in Pirkei Avos, it says, know that which is above you. It says the Maggid, know whatever you see above in heaven, whatever you learn about in Chassidus that exists in heaven, you should know it's Mimach, and it comes from you, you're able to impact. As we'll see in the Maimer also, the even levels beyond that, even God's essence, so to speak, is affected, as we shall see from our term mitzvahs. At the level of Atik, at the level of the source of all sources, our efforts do not have any impact whatsoever. Only the way Hashem vests himself in the spiritual cosmos, beginning from the sphere of Chachma, from the beginning of the spiritual cosmos, the level of Chachma, there we could say our efforts can make an impact. But there's also you could also say about the level of Arich, which is a source of the world of Atzilus, the source of Chachma. You could say about Arich as well that our efforts reach Arich also. However, the level, the inner dimension of the Keser, there our efforts do not have any impact whatsoever. That's how we could explain these two passages of the Talmud, where we say that our efforts, so to speak, crush Hashem. If we don't serve Hashem Torah mitzvahs, Hashem feels crushed. as we learned yesterday, Tzur Chateshi, and as Moshe Rabbeinu was asked by Hashem, help me out. You should have given me help. You should have blessed me. Hashem asked Moshe Rabbeinu for a blessing. What does that mean? So Moshe Rabbeinu responds to Hashem, Yigdal na koyach Adonai, may the power of Adonai be enhanced. What is Moshe saying? The power of Adonai. So now we understand. Adonai, that word of that name of Hashem, is associated with the power of the 10 utterances. The 10 utterances are what sustains and nourishes and creates everything in the world. So koyach Adonai, the power of God's speech, is just like by a human being. When you're passionate about something, you speak with different kind of energy than when you're not passionate about something. Your thoughts and your feelings vivify your words. So too, the intellect and emotions of the world of Atzilus, they impact what happens in Malchus. Malchus is what trickles down from Malchus, from the God's power of speech, throughout the next 3 worlds till it's this world. What kind of speech is Hashem saying today? Hashem says, let there be light, but what kind of light? Let there be a sky. Let there be Mechol Mordechai. What is happening in your life today? It's impacted by your Torah mitzvahs. It doesn't impact the world of Atzilus. And in the world of Atzilus, there's a change there through our Aveda, through our efforts. And that causes Koyach Adonai, a power, the power of Adonai, the power of Malchus is enhanced and changed through the Aveda, through the Yid serving of Hashem. So when we say that our Aveda does not affect Hashem, that's referring to the level of Atik. When we say it does affect Hashem, it's referring to the level of Malchus. As Moshe said, let the power of Adonai be enhanced, the power of Malchus be enhanced. That's what we could possibly say. But the Rebbe is not satisfied with this, as we shall see. To explain this, when we say that our Aveda, that our efforts impacts heaven, this refers both to the vessels and to the lights. The function of the vessels of the world of Atzilus are to hide God's light and to create a space for something outside of godliness. That's the function of the vessel. Just like by a purpose of a vessel in this world is in order to you to be able to have a tool, to be able to use whatever it may be, so too, in order for the lights of Hashem to, for example, in order for us to experience, to know Hashem, or to love Hashem, or to fear Hashem, to understand something about godliness, that's all because there are the spheres of Chochmah, of Das, of Ches, because there's a kindness of Atzilus. That's where we're able to experience love for Hashem, because there is an expression of kindness in Atzilus. So that sphere, it's possible for us to be impacted by it because there is vessels in Atzilus. Because the vessels hide Hashem's light, that leaves room for there to be something that exists that could experience and receive that. That's the goal of a vessel. When the light is shining, all you have is the source, but no one to receive it. There's no one there at all other than the light. It is the vessels that hide Hashem's light that allow there to be someone to receive Hashem's light. Through an abundance of this chain going from level to level of more and more concealment, it's possible that there can emanate from these vessels actual creations that feel themselves to be separate from Hashem. And since the whole purpose of the vessels is for the outside, meaning that there should be something outside of godliness that could be, or more accurately, that feels that it's outside of godliness, to receive from Hashem. And these vessels eventually produce, through many, many more contractions and concealments, creations. So therefore, the level of vessels, certainly our efforts, our service to Hashem impacts them, because they're all about creation. They're all about what comes from them. That means when we don't serve Hashem, there is something that's missing in the vessels of Atzilus. There's a blemish in the vessels of Atzilus. that blemish, that when we're lacking in the service of Hashem, when we blemish the vessels, what that causes is that there's a more of a concealment of godliness that needs to be for us to receive it, until it's possible for klippa and unholy things to receive nourishment as well. This fuels the unholy. This fuels klippa. That's why the Torah says regarding cursing God's name, the Torah uses the expression v'noikev shemavaya. Noikev means to make a hole. So by Yid not doing the right thing, he, so to speak, he punctures the vessel and causes the energy of the Eibishter to nourish klippa. Just like, God forbid, when there's something wrong with one of your limbs, and that, just like when you're sleeping, so you may have all your soul faculties intact, just like when you're awake, but they're not functioning properly. So too, if there's something wrong with someone's ear, so the soul's power isn't fully expressed in your ear. The power to hear isn't there. So too, when we say that a Yid is lacking the service of Hashem and it impacts things in heaven, so there's a lack of revelation of Hashem in Chochmah, Bina, and Das. There is, just like when we're sleeping, we still exist. We still have our faculties. So too, it's possible that the world still exists, although there's a lack of our service of Hashem. But just like when you're asleep, your digestive system is more pronounced, and your power of thought and your feelings are more dormant, or of course you could have, God forbid, scary dreams, but you're not thinking in the regular orderly way. In a similar way, it says that when the Eibishter when the Torah says, so to speak, Hashem is in a state of sleep, that means that the world is in a state where things which are important to Hashem seem like they're not important. He's not paying attention to them. And things which are important are not important. He said, they seem to be the highest, the most important thing. They're getting the most attention. So our lack of Aveda, our lack of service to Hashem, can cause, so to speak, Hashem to be asleep. That's why it says by the Megillah that was special. The main miracle in the time of Purim was the Achashverosh awoke from his sleep. What's so big deal of Achashverosh waking up from his sleep? Why is that the main miracle? So this says, the Yalkut says that Achashverosh is a parable for Hashem. When it says the king awoke from his sleep, it means that Hashem, so to speak, awoke from his sleep. Hashem, instead of the Jewish people being downtrodden, they're so important to Hashem, and Haman is the highest level of power. So Hashem was at that time looking like he's asleep, like what is important to him is not important, what's not important is important. And then Hashem wakes up from his sleep, and Haman is hanged on the gallows, and Mordechai is raised to the position of Mishnah Melech, of being the second in command to the Achashverosh. So our Aveda, our service of Hashem, impacts what happens in heaven, and that trickles down to what happens in this world. So us being asleep, are not seeing divine providence, are not hearing, are not thinking about what's really going on, that causes, so to speak, Hashem to, chas v'shalom, not to hear our cries, not to look at us, chas v'shalom. So, but conversely, when we see and hear and when we perform, that causes an impact on heaven as well. Okay. So certainly our Aveda causes a blemish in the vessels of Hashem. But not only does our efforts make an impact on the vessel, there's also an impact on the light. Although it seems that if we don't serve Eibishter, we're only blemishing the vessel, not the light. However, when there's a blemish in the vessel, the light departs. And when the light departs from the vessel, that affects the light as well. Why? The whole reason Hashem made the light is so that it should shine. So when the light is not shining, the light is not fulfilling its purpose. So therefore, our service of Hashem doesn't only puncture the vessels, but if it punctures a vessel, it also impacts the light, because the light is only about giving light to the world. Even though without the vessel, the light would not shine to the world, because the light is too high to reach the world. But its whole purpose is to give light to the world. The light's purpose is to give light to the world, but it can't give light to the world without the vessel. So if you're going to puncture the vessel, you're affecting what the purpose of light is. Because the light now cannot fulfill its purpose of giving light to the world. So automatically the light's purpose is not being fulfilled, the light's not doing what it's supposed to. Not only that, even the light of Hashem that does not get dressed in a vessel, a light of Hashem like the level of Arich we were discussing before, God's desire for the world, which is not in a vessel. The level of Ratzin, desire, is not in a vessel at all. However, that is also affected by our service of Hashem. How so? Because that is the source for the lights that go in the vessels. So there is a ripple effect. Our Aveda blemishes the vessels. Why does it blemish the vessels? Because the vessels are all about creating a space for something, for creations outside of godliness. And conversely, or because of that, that also impacts the light of Hashem that was previous to the vessels, now departs from the vessels because of lack of Aveda. And that also affects the light of Hashem, which is even higher than the vessels, because that's the source of the light that goes in the vessels. So therefore, our Aveda certainly does have an effect on the level of Ishtalshlos, level of the spiritual cosmos, but not in the level of Atik, as we shall see with Hashem tomorrow. Why not in Atik? And any questions or comments?
Yes. Is there a diagram of this, the different levels and where things, because I mean, my Hebrew is such that it's hard for me to.
I'm not aware. If I find something, I will post it. If anyone ever knows of a diagram of Shtalshlos, that would be very beneficial. That'd be great. Actually, no, I think I might know something. If someone knows something, please post it. Okay, Zai Gezunder Barye, Dr. Bressman, take care of Jeff, take care of Beryl, take care of Unison, take care of Jonathan, take care of David. Have a great day. Good luck.